Hello there, my name is Ben Wilcock, and I am the Apple Hunter. Each week I review the latest apps across the Apple ecosystem, and I help you to decide which ones are worth your time and which ones are better left at the bottom of the app charts. Each episode is broken into 3 sections. First is the hunting landscape, which is an in-depth look at all of the apps that launched this week, from the smallest screen on the Apple Watch to the largest screen on the Apple TV, and every Apple device in between. Next comes the hunt of the week, the one app that you should download and use immediately. Finally, we come to the hunting horizon, a trend, important topic, or upcoming event that impacts Apple's platforms and needs a closer look. Well, let's get started with episode 9. The Apple Watch apps have been pretty slim pickings over the last couple of weeks, but I have installed watchOS 8 on my Apple Watch. I have enjoyed some of the updates for sure, especially the transition from the Breathe app, which was really just a 1.0 that hasn't been touched for a while, into the Mindfulness app, which is a more holistic view at mindfulness using your Apple Watch. Unfortunately, because I'm on a Series 3, the new watch faces and a lot of the new functionality is not going to be available to me. I'm not totally sure why they are continuing to sell the Watch Series 3, but it really does look like this is the last year for full support because it's a different screen size, and it seems as though a lot of the functionality that they want to do with the watch, including pushing it to be its own independent device, is not going to be possible for this particular generation of watch. So when the Series 7 comes out, maybe we'll look at getting an upgrade. Moving to a slightly larger screen size, we've got a bunch of really cool iPhone apps this week. The first of which is called Binger, where you're finding series or movies together. The idea is that you tell the app how many of these streaming services you have access to: HBO Max, Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, Prime Video, Hulu. Those are the big ones that are in this app. And it offers up shows from those different services that you can choose by swiping right or left. This mechanic has worked well for things like dating, for finding food preferences, really for making any decisions that are difficult or that you would like a little bit more inspiration within. The interesting part of this mechanic, though, is that you are swiping left and right on movies or TV shows with someone else. The idea is that you can asynchronously choose things that you want to watch with your partner, with a friend. And then if you're looking for those shows that are overlapping, where you like them and your partner also likes them, then that's what you should watch. I found the implementation to be rather good, although the recommendations that it was making, I really did have to train it quite a bit before I started getting things that it was recommending for me to swipe left and right on that I had even heard of. There's just so much content out there that I really don't know if I would like something or not until I've read a little bit about it, until I've watched a trailer. So I wish some of that functionality were built into Binger. But if you've got a partner that you struggle to find things to watch together, it might be a good way to test things out a little bit. The next app is called Tangram, which is a logic game. Everybody has played with tangrams in the physical world, whether that's in elementary school or waiting for a doctor's appointment. I have a lot of love for the parallelogram or triangle, square, all of these different shapes that you're fitting into larger shapes that it's asking you to build. It is a toy of an app. It offers up an opportunity to play with physical objects and rearrange them with your fingers. And it is a fun diversion from whatever it is that you might be doing, doom scrolling or otherwise distracting yourself with something that feels slightly less educational, let's say. Now, the app does have occasional uses of the Russian language. I believe that this was built by a Russian team, but it really only comes up in the title of the app. All of the language and instructions are written in English and are easy to follow and understand. If you have enjoyed tangrams as a child or even as an adult, this is a free app and one that launches with some pretty decent challenges for your mind, and I would recommend it because it's pretty fun. All right, now we're getting into some apps that are a little bit more ambitious. The next one is called Quest, which is an app for audio advice. The idea of the app is to provide sound bites of career advice. There are so many people who have great advice that they can share, but what format should you actually be using to get that advice? Writing and reading a long essay on Medium or on Substack doesn't really have the same feeling as hearing a founder, someone who has gone before you, hearing them reflect on their mistakes, on their successes, on how it is that you can take on the roles that they have taken on. This micro audio format seems to be really easily matched with this kind of advice. I don't want to necessarily listen to an extended podcast session from someone that I don't know, but I will listen to 30 seconds, a couple of minutes on a particular topic. And I also like the functionality in here where you can look at a given topic and hear multiple different perspectives on that topic. A lot of the questions being asked within the app are kind of powerful. Things like, what's your secret to being a great parent as an entrepreneur? What's one thing you do to help protect your privacy and the privacy of your users? What did you do as a woman in tech that men don't have to do? So it dives into not just the generic advice that you could read in 1,000 articles or listen to a whole bunch of productivity podcasts and never really get to the heart of. It dives into the social implications of working productively. It dives into multiple perspectives, many of which are underrepresented in much of the discourse going on in tech pro culture, in founding culture, all of those spaces that are not built for community engagement. I have found myself listening to a number of the answers from people that I don't know, but whose perspectives I am interested in. Each person that responds has to put their role and their company, and those companies can be small nonprofits all the way up to people who are employed at Google. And the coolest part of the app, at least to me, is that you can ask your own questions and get responses back, or you can respond to someone else's question and provide your own insights. One cool feature that they have implemented is the ability to request that someone respond to a particular question. If there is someone's perspective that you really value and you think that this is a question that they should tackle or that they would have great insight with, you can request that they respond to this question. I also really like their sharing mechanic. You can share these audio snippets, these answers to questions on Twitter and other social media, but you can also download it as a video and just share it as a text message or in any other place that accepts a video for sharing. They have made it really easy to get this network, this social network up and running for professionals. And I think if you want a community-based support network, this is a really fun way to do it. And I feel like the potential of this app is massive. I hope that a whole bunch of founders and other professionals of all stripes, that they take this app and start building a knowledge base for all of us. It really does feel like an audio version of Quora, but with a lot better vetting and a lot more personality, because you have to be yourself within it. You have to claim your identity rather than being far more anonymous like some of those other question and answer platforms. Regardless, there's a whole bunch of insights in there that I would have never come across if this app did not exist. I highly recommend you give Quest a try. And we're going to stay with this theme of audio and of podcasting for the next app, which is called Beams Micro Podcasting. While they are nominally trying to go after a podcasting audience, I actually think this is far closer to Clubhouse and some of the other audio-only conversation apps that are out there. They have done their best to create a vernacular to talk about their app. You create a beam, which is a topic that you are asking other people to respond to. You give it a title, you record your voice, and you release it into the wild, as they say. Essentially, you are inviting others to come and collaborate on your topic. This is not altogether different from the way in which Quest works, but rather has gone in a much more generic or generalized direction. You can talk about anything you want. It feels far more like an audio forum than it does a podcast platform or even a conversation platform. Because of the way that it is asynchronous, meaning that people are not talking at the same time, you can actually build a story or an idea or a topic even over time. You can dive deeper and deeper into a given topic because you can add something to what someone else said previously, or go off in a totally different direction without taking the entire conversation with you. I think if you have a network of people that you want to talk to, friends, colleagues, other folks that you want to bring into this space and have a conversation or dive into a particular topic, I think it could work extremely well. But for more random conversation, I don't know how often people are just going to try and find a particular topic or try and answer a whole bunch of questions unless they either know the people or are super passionate about the topic. And I think that's why, for me, Quest as an audio advice app with a specific focus on professional activities seems to appeal more directly to me. I could see Beams being more useful to folks who are maybe a little less focused on a particular area of their life. They are maybe a little younger, or they have a lot more varied interests, or they are looking to build out a new social network of audio. Ultimately, I do think that the app is well done, and the topics, as you dig into them, can continue to bring value, because I love hearing new voices. I love hearing new ideas from people that I've never heard of before. I do think that it's going to be harder to get a whole bunch of people to jump on board and start recording in here versus having that in a Twitter space, or even just hopping on a Discord to have that synchronous conversation. Certainly an interesting approach, and one to watch if you're following this audio conversation space. The next app is called Reason FM. And this is a podcasting app. It is a podcast client in the full way that Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket Casts or Overcast are all podcast clients. You can actually import your podcast subscriptions into Reason FM in order to listen to them within this app. And the reason why you might do that, is because it introduces social functionality. And I think this is something that podcasts have been missing for a very long time. Just like on every YouTube video, people can discuss it in the comments. Many people want to be able to discuss their favorite podcast episodes and have a conversation about it. Most podcasts that have tried to engage their audience with a discussion turn to things like Reddit, or putting up their audio-only podcast on YouTube and using their comment feature in order to increase the discussion. But Reason is a little bit different because it builds in the conversation in the same app that you are listening to your podcast on. The other functionality that I found interesting was the idea of having podcast creators claim their podcast on the platform. Not quite a week ago, I saw that someone had asked for the Apple Hunter to be claimed on Reason FM. It was how I found out about the app. And the process was fairly trivial. I went in, showed that I owned the show. And what that let me do is I then can become an administrator on my show and help encourage the discussion on the platform. Now, I do struggle a little bit with the idea that I'm pushing people to yet another podcasting platform, one that is in its infancy, where the social interaction is going to happen. But I do think that the social interaction and the way they've built the commenting stream is generally pretty good. And I love the idea of having contextual conversation about the audio medium of podcasting. And I think that this app sets up creators as more than just the releaser of the podcast. They are also conversation starters. They are also personalities in the same way that YouTube has creators who release things into the world and are looking for reaction, are looking for discussion, are looking for community. And I think if this app can help to tend to that community or even help build that community, I think there's a lot of value that can be created in that kind of a podcasting ecosystem. It strikes me as really interesting that some of the major players like Spotify or Apple Podcasts have gone down the route of making it easier for creators to make money on their podcast, but not trying to find a way of creating a more user-generated community within that space. I think it is likely because they have seen what has happened on YouTube, where the comments just devolve into shouting matches and terrible language. And so they're a little bit hesitant to introduce that. But if a new player can come in and build out this social layer on top of the open podcast ecosystem, then they are creating value for all of the people who are using that. I just know that it needs a critical mass in order to really lock in that value. But if you're looking for a social component when you're listening to podcasts, definitely give it a try. Next iPhone app is called Annie Music, and it's another app that has a single purpose and does it extremely well. It takes a link from whatever music service you are using, and it allows you to share that link so that people on a competing music service can open it and get the right song or right album or right artist. Right now, it looks like they have Spotify, Apple Music, and Deezer built in, but I do know that they are looking to add additional music services so that you can share between those as well. Music sharing has always been a little bit more difficult than it needs to be because we don't have this interoperability between music platforms. I have used Audacity or SongLink for this very purpose, but I like having a standalone app to be able to do it. And Annie Music is kind of a playful name, one that I can remember easily, and it will help me to just be able to share a single link without having to go to a web service and generate the link and then share that. So I think if it adds the other music services like Tidal or Amazon Music, I think I would start using this far more than any other service for trying to share music to people that I don't know what music service they use. Very cool approach from Annie Music. As I said, we're staying with the theme of audio in the iPhone section this week. The third app that is trying to build out this idea of audio topics is called Opensoul, the voice forum. And this is yet another take, another variation on the theme of starting with a topic and asking others to respond to that topic using their voice. The niche that Opensoul is trying to carve out for itself is being honest about where you are in your life, about sharing life experiences, stories, and even secrets that you have that you want to put out into the world. This one is a little bit more limited in that it only allows for 60 seconds or fewer, and it has given categories. There are 18 of them currently for you to put your topic within so that other people can find them easily and can respond to them. This one very much feels earlier on in their launch process than either Beams or Quest, but ultimately I think it could have just as good of a chance as the other two for building out this community of audio conversation. I like the emphasis on opening your soul and on a lack of judgment for the things that you hear, because it is trying to emphasize that community is built without judgment and without disparaging one another. So there's some intentionality within this platform for creating safe spaces. And I think if that particular penchant for community is your vibe, then definitely Opensoul may be the one to try. All right, we've come to the last iPhone only app of the week. It's called Feed. Push the join button. In this app, which is very well laid out and highly polished, you join a person or a topic or an idea, and you record video responses to that person or topic or idea. It's a little bit more on the video messaging side of things, so think TikTok or Snapchat, but the mechanic of having this infinite wall of videos that you can scroll in any direction and find new voices and new discussions is a really interesting mechanic, and one that I think could lead to far more serendipity rather than just having this feed scrolling infinitely. When you're recording a video, Feed, the app, will select the background music. You just have to tell it what mood you're in or what mood you're trying to convey. And then Feed will place that video in a related section of that infinite canvas. There's some good video editor features inside of the app as well, but nothing as sophisticated as something like you would get inside of a TikTok or an Instagram. This app is a lot of fun to play around with, but there are not a huge number of people to interact with just yet. And so I do think that it needs a little bit of help in terms of popularity in order to make these discussions more robust. I found that using video actually made the discussions a little bit more self-conscious and far less honest than using audio did. And I think that that's a really interesting distinction. People tended to be really honest in Quest when they were on the hook and they had their identity known and where they worked even, but there was a little bit of self-censoring that was going on there, because they don't want to come off as something that they are not. Inside of Beams, that was very freeform. Whatever you want to say goes. But the audio format allowed for a significant amount of freedom. And there was a lot of passion that came through on many of the streams that I listened to. Opensoul, again, very early on, but they have a particular vantage point trying to go for bearing your soul to the world. Feed seems a little bit more free-spirited, but the function of turning your camera upon yourself means that you have to be you to a certain extent. It is the difference between audio and video. You cannot hide your identity unless you are putting on a mask or putting on some other way of disguising yourself. You have to be you. Whereas in audio, you can be any kind of voice. You can borrow an authenticity that you might not be able to pull off if people are looking at you in the face. There are some interesting and fun discussions on feed, and I would recommend that you take a look, because I think this could be an interesting mechanic for other people to use inside of their own apps, that infinite wall of topics and associated content. I think it's a really neat way of seeing content that is associated with one another without having to be in this long feed. If nothing else, I take inspiration from feed for that mechanic. All right, let's move on to iPhone and iPad apps that are shared across those two platforms. The first one being Pistache or Pistache. I do believe that the original region for this app is French, so I'm probably pronouncing it just terribly. But this app is a way of incentivizing your kids to get chores done. I found it really joyful and playful, and I think it could be something that would be useful to a lot of parents. The idea is that you set up challenges for your kids, like brushing their teeth every night, and you have them either compete with their siblings or do it on their own and achieve something. You can set up your own system of rewards, but the way that it works is their daily missions or challenges that you set up. They earn keys, and those keys can unlock something. They can unlock games or watching a favorite cartoon or show. You can unlock characters to play with in the app. And I found that the subtle encouragement that this app really takes on is quite lovely. By having your children be a team doing a mission together, it creates a lot of the family dynamic that I think parents want, but don't necessarily know how to facilitate without help from an outside source. And the iPad or iPhone becomes that outside source. The app itself is the one that manages all of the tasks and the missions and everything like that. And all the parents have to do is set it up with their kids and talk about the motivating factors or the keys that will work for them or the characters that they want to unlock. Any parent who has set up a reward system knows that nothing works forever, but I do think there's enough variety here. There's enough novelty for kids that are in a particular age range, probably about 5 to 10 years old, that they would get enough out of this app to have it work at least for a little while. And I think the fact that you can do a subscription for just 1 month or maybe 3 months allows you to try it out to see if this is something that will work for you and your kids. The next iPad and iPhone app I actually mentioned on last week's Apple Hunter, but this was the first time that I had taken a deep look at it, called HoloVista. And it was an Apple Design Award winner for inclusivity this past week. But the reason why I'm bringing it forward again is because I did not talk about just how beautiful it is and how much I love the mechanic of looking around at a perfectly rendered, detailed room or space and finding new, joyous objects to take pictures of, using your iPad as a portal into the world, or by manually moving around the room, you are taking pictures of the space and trying to figure out what is going on. There's a story being told that you are not aware of at the very beginning, and you are discovering it as you take pictures of these objects. As you are asked to focus on one thing and then the next and then the next, you are putting together all of the puzzle pieces. I could not recommend highly enough playing this game with someone else. The ability to look at a new space, find the details that are important to you, and see the level of thought that went into this app is worth the $4.99 alone. If you haven't given it a shot, or if you haven't heard of it yet, definitely go to the App Store and download HoloVista. Our last cross iPhone and iPad app is called Chatterbug Streams. I like this one a lot. In the app, you can learn Spanish, French, and German through highly contextualized video lessons. The reason why I say highly contextualized is that you're not learning these words and these sentences and the grammar of these languages in the abstract. You are watching them make food or do an activity. The most fascinating part of Chatterbug Streams is the streaming. Each one of the videos are originally a live stream during which you can interact with your teacher and the other learners that are trying to learn the same language. And so even though you're not part of a formal cohort of learners or taking a class with others on a daily basis, anytime that you join in the live stream, you are with your fellow learners. They make use of interactive polls, of quizzes, of questions that you can respond to with a short constructed response while the lesson is happening. They've built an entire platform for language learning that is far more about the community that is learning along with you than it is just about the language itself. In that way, it is far less abstract than what you would do on Duolingo or some of these other language learning services. It is also entertaining. Watching someone cook in another language is far more interesting than simply repeating the same phrases over and over again and then forgetting them 10 minutes later. Overall, I was surprised by Chatterbug Streams. I was surprised by how polished it was. I was surprised by how much personality each of these language purveyors have when they are teaching, and I was surprised by how much joy everyone was having when they are trying to learn a language together. So if other apps and ways of learning language have not worked for you in the past, I would give Chatterbug Streams a try. It is a totally new way of learning a language, at least new to me. So definitely one to check out. All right, let's move to the Mac and talk about an app that is cross-platform, iPhone, iPad, and Mac. It's called Zones. Organize your life. And while I'm sure many of us do not need yet another task manager, the way in which this one works is pretty unique and is well worth a look. It is called Zones because you can set up as many different spaces, as many different zones as you want to for your tasks and ideas. And the way that it's structured is that every task or idea that is within a particular zone has a particular color. Initially, you get red, blue, and green, and those map to work, personal, and hobbies. But you can add as many more as you want. And the idea here is to add as many tasks as you want to each one of these different zones, but also add ideas. And they're both separated from one another, the tasks and the ideas, and together. Because we know that many times when you have an idea, it turns into a task very quickly. Adding new tasks is incredibly easy to do, and you can obviously add due dates and notes to them, but they also have a function where you add a difficulty level, where you say, it's easy, normal, hard, or not quite sure yet how hard this particular task is going to be. And you don't have to worry about any of that when you add a new idea, because it's sort of in the infancy stage. It hasn't made it yet to be promoted to being a task within one of your zones. Ultimately, it is a very simple look at task management, but it is beautifully laid out, and it's super easy to go from one zone to the next if you need to context switch. And once you have started adding your tasks and ideas inside of the app, you actually get this more global view that they call the scorecard. You can see how much time you've focused on different things. You can set goals and reminders for your overall work, and you can see your progress over time. It creates some very good-looking graphs of how much you have worked on each individual zone, how much you've worked on each individual task. And because it is cross-platform, all of your tasks and ideas sync across all your devices. I also found the built-in focus timer as well as the widgets that you can place onto your home screen to be great selling features inside of this app as well. It is well thought through. And I think that as it continues to build steam and add features, lots of people are going to jump on board because of the simple layout and the way it functionally separates tasks into different colors. It almost creates a room inside of your head with just that color for the given topic. While not everyone is going to do this, the fact that you can also specifically request new features and upvote them in order to see when things are going to come to the app, it really does give its users a lot of power to determine the future of where Zones goes from here. So if you haven't given it a try yet, I definitely recommend it. There's no subscription fee. It's $1.99. And from what I can see, it seems to be worth it. Now let's head into Mac-only territory. This app is called System Color Picker. And it reminds me a lot of the app that we reviewed a few weeks ago called Tint. But this one has all of its features up front and is literally in the name. It provides the built-in color picker that you would expect from Photoshop or Pixelmator. It puts it into a standalone app so that you can see what colors you are working with. You have your eyedropper and you can move it around the screen and see what color it is in hex, in RGB, in any format you need, really. It doesn't need to do more than that, and it is 100% free. If you have the need for a separate color picker, no reason not to give this one a try. It's an open source application as well, and that fact also means that other developers can add it to their application as a module, a better version of a color picker as well. The last Mac app that we're going to talk about this week is called Depot, the 3D model library. And it's a little bit more of a niche app because not everyone yet is used to dealing with 3D objects. But when I was running the virtual reality lab for the School of Dental Medicine at the University of Colorado, I had this need for a library of 3D objects. I absolutely needed a place to store them, to categorize them, to put metadata around them, and there just wasn't a system to do it. With the advent of this application, you can now put together a project with all of your 3D files, whether that's from Thingiverse or Poly or any of the other online resources that allow for you to download or upload 3D objects. It allows you to categorize all of those 3D objects into a single project and to take notes about them in the same way that you would Apple Notes or Devon Think or even Obsidian. The idea is that you are collecting all of the information that you want to about these 3D objects into a single location for you to keep track of it. Now, I did notice that not every 3D file was perfectly well rendered, and some of the larger 3D files that I had needed to take some time to render themselves in order for me to be able to pull it up into the viewer. But ultimately, it took whatever I wanted to throw at it put it into a collection for me, and it let me start feeling good about all of these files that, for the most part, the Mac and any other computer system doesn't really know what to do with yet. We're going to come back to this topic of 3D files when we get to the hunting horizon this week. But for now, just know that Depot is a great way of organizing 3D files in a way that feels intuitive and purpose-built. It isn't just a finder for those 3D files, but rather think of it as an application like Photos, where you are categorizing these 3D files as if they were just photos, where you are able to see in an interface that is familiar all of these new file types, and you are able to build projects out of them. Depot looks like a native Mac app and one that was carefully and lovingly created. If you are at all interested in augmented reality, in virtual reality, in 3D objects on the computer, this is definitely one to check out. And while I don't have any brand new Apple TV apps this week to review, I have been excited about getting spatial audio on my Apple TV working. I really love using my AirPods Pro with my Apple TV to watch video, to listen to music. It really is a fantastic combination that allows you not to disturb anybody else in the house, but to have a phenomenal viewing experience. I hope we have some more Apple TV news in the near future that takes advantage of this functionality. All right, it is now time for the hunt of the week. The hunt of the week for episode 9 is called Knights of San Francisco, and it is a game unlike any other that I have ever played. While it calls itself an RPG game book, I found that it was an immersive experience using text, images, and game mechanics to build out a world and a story that I could not stop reading and interacting with. It was as if the original text adventure games like Zork were brought to the modern day and created with the utmost care. From the very beginning of starting to read the story and starting to interact with the characters, I knew it was going to be different. The music is the first clue to this. It is immersive, and I would listen to it as if it were a soundtrack, if it were otherwise available outside of the app. In the story, you are exploring San Francisco 1,000 years into the future. Society has broken down, and you are trying to figure out what's going on. You are a young necromancer, someone who can bring people back from the dead, and you use that skill along with many others that you gather up throughout the gameplay, and you try and navigate this world. The art is gorgeous, the puzzles are interesting, and ultimately, the joy I felt discovering this world was something that I didn't know that I was missing when I was playing other games that claim to be immersive or claim to have good story elements. The developer says that the experience is likely only going to take you about 90 minutes, but I did find that it was more than 90 minutes of an experience because I was thinking about it when I wasn't playing it. I was contemplating the next moves that I was going to take, the different things that I was going to explore. And ultimately, I really loved playing it on the iPad. You can play it on the iPhone as well, but on the iPad, it's a big, beautiful, immersive screen. And I just wanted to be in that world, even though it is slightly terrifying. Ultimately, I think you just have to play the game in order to understand it. But I do want to talk about a couple of quick details that I think can only come from someone who has taken an extreme amount of care in developing a game or an app. The first of which is how the text loads on the page. It comes in as a bright pop of color, almost like a rainbow effect, as the text is materializing on the screen. And the mechanic of tapping on this skull at the bottom of the screen in order to advance the story feels so intentional and interesting because of where the developer has chosen to put the stops. So a certain amount of text shows up and you have to tap on the skull in order to advance that text, in order to find out the next part of the story. Sometimes it is just a few words that you read, and that's the whole statement. You are taking that part of it in, and then you're advancing. There's no way to just fast forward everything. You are taking it as the creator intended, but you can scroll back up throughout the entire story and see all of the things that you have done, because you might need to remember something that happened previously, or you might want to go and explore that piece of artwork that you found in one part of the story. This app is the hunt of the week because I was able to step inside of this story and live in it, see what the developer saw, what the storyteller saw, and it left me wanting more. So hopefully, Knights of San Francisco, once everyone downloads it and gives it a try, will encourage this storyteller to keep telling these kinds of stories, because I want to play every single one of them. And finally, we've come to the hunting horizon. This week's topic is object capture. In this year's WWDC, one of the most incredible demos was to show off the creation of a 3D model with object capture. This is a new API that Apple has released to allow anyone to take pictures with their iPhone or iPad and create 3D objects simply by walking around it or rotating it just slightly and taking enough pictures for the tool itself to construct a three-dimensional object. The most interesting part of this is that Apple did not release an app for this. They released an API, meaning that any developer can build this capability into their own app. Anyone who has an idea for how to take real-world objects and put them into a digital space can now incorporate this into their own application. We are about ready to see an absolute explosion of 3D objects on our phones, on our computers, on our iPads. This is obviously an attempt to get people comfortable with the idea of building virtual worlds, of putting real-world objects into those virtual worlds. Whether that's in an augmented or virtual reality setting, Apple is laying the groundwork through this object capture API to democratize the ability for us to capture those physical things and bring them into the digital space. This may not feel like a sea change, but when I look at what's possible, taking a ceramic mug and taking a few pictures before injecting it into a digital space that allows me to rotate it, that allows me to manipulate it, make it bigger, smaller, add it to any other digital tool that I see fit. That is a fundamentally different opportunity than what came before. Previously, in order to do that three-dimensional capture, in order to get a physical object into the digital world, you either had to have incredibly robust cameras that could take pictures from all angles, or you had to go through a very lengthy process where a series of cameras all took pictures at the exact same time in order to construct that three-dimensional model. Now, we have the ability to take anything in our world and replicate it in the digital world. Not to be too dystopian about it, but we can improve upon the things that we see by capturing them and understanding them as three-dimensional objects that can be manipulated and changed. I imagine a future where anything you can hold can be copied. I imagine a future where you can take a few pictures and send them to someone or some service or some artificial intelligence that can identify the issue you are having with your washing machine or your car. The possibilities feel limitless for what you can do with such a tool. And I, for one, am really excited to see the apps and the services that come out from object capture. It feels like the latest breadcrumb that Apple has sprinkled on its path towards augmented reality, opening up the entire environment to objects that are not just there in real life that you can physically touch and that have weight and mass, but also to objects that have been collected from elsewhere in your life. Imagine not having to carry around all of these keepsakes around your household that you have amassed over the last 20 some years, but rather that you could quickly scan an object and put it into your digital repository and have your digital collection of all of the things that you would like to reminisce about. And they are all there for you. You don't have to go and get them out of the keepsakes bin in your garage. You can chronicle them. You can tell their stories, and their stories are your story. They are the story of your work, the story of your life, as seen through these objects that you have captured in full 3 dimensions. And you are able to put them anywhere you want to. There's something very special about that. And I hope that developers see it this way too, that there is limitless possibility in using object capture to create the world that we want to see. Thank you so much for listening to episode 9 of The Apple Hunter. You can find the show notes and all of the links to these apps at theapplehunter.com/9. Please do follow me on Twitter at _theapplehunter. And the best place to subscribe is on Apple Podcasts for exclusive bonus episodes. I'm really excited to start releasing the Developer Stories bonus episodes. And if you have feedback or ideas about the show, you can send them to ben@theapplehunter.com. I respond to every single one of them. Thanks so much for listening this week, and happy apple hunting out there.